point. There are some positions where you play f3 and then you try to break with e4, but at this position I do not want to play e4 that fast. Maybe knight e2, then knight e5, and knight f3, you know, all these common moves here to try to prepare it, and then in the future maybe even king h1, rook d1, and trying to attack to g7. Those are some lines which are really interesting. I like knight e5 with knight e2 and f3. This is something that you have to be careful with. Of course I do not play these positions too often, but this is something that you have to consider here. Also sometimes there are c4s and weird things like that which are important to know. In this position I just wanted to play something more or less solid, which gave me some decent position. Like for example here knight f3, knight c6. I don't like that knight c6 yet. Maybe d5 directly, even better, so that you are not defining your position too quickly. So castling here d5 now, bishop f4. Instead of bishop d7, I do believe that bishop d6 is another way to proceed here, which is a little bit better for you maybe, because I won't take on d6. That will signify, or what that will mean that you're gonna take a lot of squares on e5, and I do not like to do that. So I will wait here for you to take, like for example this move, bishop d6. It's not recommended to trade the dark square bishops in the Dutch. Yeah, but this is another variant. I mean, here even if you're giving away the dark square bishop, the idea is that you're getting these pawns double up on f4, and you're opening this line here. There is some compensation for the black bishop here, and I know that generally speaking this is your really good bishop in comparison with this one, but I do believe that there is some certainly there is some compensation for that. Of course the knight on c6 doesn't look that nice. Yeah, probably bishop d7 is good because your knight on c6 doesn't look like this kind of annoying plans which you usually have in these positions. Sometimes knight d6, which is a little bit annoying, and all these things which are happening. So maybe bishop d7 is even a little bit more accurate because of the knight on c6, I believe, and then you do not have anything like c5 and all these things. And yeah, I didn't want to trade your bishop here on d6. I wanted to wait for you to take, which will be a little bit better for me. So bishop d7, or we'll go with my position. You said I wanted to change the knight. Well, if you wanted to change the knight, whoa, that's gonna take a while, you know, because you do not have anything to change it yet. Maybe in the future as we did. Let's take a look what happened, right? Knight bd2, look at how my position is getting really solid here. That's another reason for bishop d7, but it's still really hard to trade the knight. So my position looks really harmonious here. I do not have anything to be concerned right now, and suddenly your position doesn't look so nice. Like, yeah, this is more or less a typical Dutch, but I don't like your position that much. This bishop on c8 is trapped, which is a common problem here. This knight on c6 doesn't go with the position. Also, we have to be really careful because you haven't castled yet. This pawn structure here is not the best pawn structure in the world. And you have to be extremely careful with that, especially with this knight on c6, which doesn't go with the position. So knight d4. The thing with the Dutch is that it is really good if the other guy doesn't play anything like extremely active, right? But if the other guy is playing active, then you get a position which is hard to play with the black pieces. That's why it is not so playable like in the highest levels of chess, is because if the other guy is playing something active, then it's really hard to hold these positions with the black pieces. And this was something that I wanted to see if you were able to hold this strategically, and I saw that you couldn't, because here we have some problems in terms of strategy. Do not play knight d4 so quickly, I believe, here, because you always have knight d4. Finish your development, castle, I will recommend that. Of course I know that a lot of people will play knight d4 in this position, and there is nothing wrong with that, but I will recommend you to castle, to finish your development, and to go with something like, I don't know, maybe this, and try to get into a better situation with your bishop, maybe with the common plans here on this diagonal. Of course you're gonna hate the knight. So there are these kind of moves in the future. Let's see, how did you react? I don't like this plan of knight d4 and bishop f6 without finishing the development. Finish your development and then try to do something like this. I do believe it's better for you, because then your pieces are getting a little bit more active. And then you can bring even your rook here, and if you want to break the center on e5, then you have some chances. But I don't know, this square is always going to be controlled, so I have seen in some positions that people play h6 and g5 and try to kill you on the king side, but I don't think that's gonna fly in this position because you do not have enough control of the center. So this is why I do not like to play these positions with the black pieces. It's really hard to find a plan here which doesn't leave you with some bad piece on the board, right? Look how the white pieces are all well developed and your black pieces are all like kind of not having a decent idea here. So that's something that I wouldn't recommend you to do. I played h4 here to stop you from playing anything like g5, which might be tricky. I didn't want that for my position. I didn't want to play bishop e3 or maybe bishop e5 because that's not the kind of things that I would like to play in this position. So I thought, well, I'm going to play h4. If he plays g5, then I can trade, and I don't think I have any problems there. And if he plays h6, then to play g5, the ability in these diagonals and might be dangerous for him in the future. So I thought, no, that's not gonna fly. h6 is probably a decent idea here, but I don't like that either because your pieces are not well developed as to attack. If you want to attack, and it's something that you want to do, you have to develop your pieces in a way that your pieces are together, gathered in certain position, attacking certain point of the board. Otherwise, your attacks are not going to fly. Also, something that you have to consider when you're attacking is that, like, you have to have more pieces attacking than the other guy has pieces defending, because otherwise it's really hard to get into the position or to try to move your pieces into the position of the other guy. That's really hard. Also, if the other guy has a lot of pieces around the place that you want to attack, usually attacking is not the best policy, because if you do attack a lot, then what's going to happen is that my pieces are going to stop you from doing so. So that's another thing that you have to consider. Other things that you have to consider here may be finish your development. Important in terms of strategy. I do notice that you're having some problems in strategy. It is not necessarily like you do not have problems in strategy and then everything goes away. It is that also you have some little problems in strategy, but people often do not punish them, right? If people do not punish your little problems in strategy, then that's cool for you, but basically that doesn't mean that you are not having problems, right? So bishop f6 here, I don't like this position for the black pieces. c3, just solid, defending the pawn on d4, stopping you from having any weird tactics on the pawn on d4. I still do not see a clear plan for your position. My plans are quite simple here. Put the knight on e5, then play f3, get rid of this knight on e4, and then play e4, right? So it's extremely easy for me, like nothing extremely complex yet. Also, my king is in a really nice position, your king is still on the center, and finally you castle. I was just waiting for knight e5 here. In this position, like here, you were waiting for knight e5 or after? Maybe in this position you were waiting for knight e5. But knight e5 doesn't seem to fly because this pawn is hanging. So yeah, I had to play c3 first, and then maybe knight e5. Not this position, okay, this one, right? You were expecting me to play, okay, in general, knight e5, of course, but it is nice if I prepare it so that you do not have a lot of options against that. Here finally I played knight e5. This is something typical here. Everybody will play knight e5, and now it's getting hard for you to play this position, I guess, because if you take with your knight, of course I'm not going to take with my bishop. I do not want you to trade your bishop for my bishop here, because that's giving you a little bit of space, and you do not have, for example, like if I trade here, even if I am giving away my bishop on f6, I would rather to do these moves so that in the future I can play c5. But of course, probably I will play something like knight takes, queen takes, and then I'll try to play c5, and suddenly the position is more or less equal. I didn't want that, right? So knight takes c5. I don't like that knight takes c5 yet. It's just that your pieces are not in a good position. And after you taking it on e5, I don't like knight e5 in this position. It's just that you're getting. I wanted to get rid of that knight on c6. Sure, but also here I will play something like, well, I'm threatening something like f3 in the future, but right now it's not gonna fly. Maybe knight takes d2. The idea is that even though you're gonna have this knight on e5, then I maybe can try to play something like knight e7 instead of playing knight takes e5. You might think that that's illogical and that's wasting some tempos, but I don't want to have this pawn on e5 because that's gonna make my position really passive. If I were you in this position, I would try to trade as many pieces as I could, but without getting to the other guy a lot of space. Because if I do so, then everything seems to be falling apart. I don't like that. So here, knight takes c5. Of course, you wanted to get rid of the knight, but maybe you have to consider how to reposition the knight or how to move the knight to some other square. I don't like knight takes c5, but this is a problem that you have since the moment that you play knight c6 also. So mistake there, and now you're paying the consequences of playing knight c6. I don't like knight takes c5, but I think that knight e7 might be a little bit passive too. Knight takes c2 doesn't seem that nice for your position either. So here I don't like your position by any means. So knight takes, pawn takes, bishop d7. Now suddenly strategically you're down. In terms of material, of course, we're equal, but strategically your position is making no sense at all, because your bishop on c8 is doing nothing, your bishop on e7 is doing nothing, your knight on e4 is doing something, but when I move my knight from d2, then you have a really nice knight on e4, but where are you going with the knight? You do not have any squares to go with the knight without losing tempi or without getting it in a really bad situation. I don't like this knight on e4 if you do not trade it for this knight on d2. Do not get attached to your knight on e4. I will say that probably here in this position, instead of taking on e5, I would prefer to take on d2. And after I took on d2, then you can take on e5. Because as I have more space, I do not have a lot of pieces to exploit it. So in general terms, you want to trade pieces when you do not have a space, or when you do not have development. You do not have development and you do not have a space because your pieces are going backwards. So of course you have these pawns here which look like taking a lot of space in the center, but that doesn't seem to fly for me. So instead of knight takes e5, take first of all on d2 before this knight on e4 becomes a passive knight, right? Because even though it looks really cool, really cute on e4, it is not going to be so fine for you. Here in this position, probably, yeah, knight takes e5 is not something that I would recommend you to do. So knight takes e5, d takes e5, bishop e7. And now see how, even though your knight on e4 looks nice, I don't want that knight for me. And I would prefer to play knight b3 so that your knight doesn't have any squares. I talk about this in one of my videos, and that might be something interesting that you should try to look at this. Maybe one of the first videos, the first one or the second one or something. I was talking about this knight on e4, which looks really nice, but sometimes it doesn't have a lot of squares. So here knight b3, the idea is that even if you play knight c5 in the future, I do not want to take that, because I can move my knight to d4 as you are obstructing your own c5, and then I can play b4, so that your knight goes even further away, and that's something that you do not want. So here in this position you play b6, which looks nice, but at the same time you're giving away this square here, and I might play something like this, and then your position looks even though I am trading pieces, I am leaving you with your bad pieces, your bishop here, and your knight, which is not going to fly too far away because I have f3, and maybe e4 in the future, and when I open the position, this might be dangerous for you because I have the pair of bishops. So those are some general ideas. I do not say that these are the best ideas. Also, you have to see that you're just spending 4 minutes of, you're just spending a minute of your time here, and you're not thinking enough. You have to think about this position. You have to elaborate a plan. c5 after knight d4. But of course you cannot play c5 after knight d4 because I have f3, right? I don't want to play knight d4 until your knight is out of e4. Exactly. This is something that you have to consider all the time. f3, important strategical stuff in these Dutch defenses. You cannot just play these Dutch defenses without considering f3, because this is one of the most common plans in these positions. And even though I do not play these Dutch things, I know these things, and you should know these things even better than me, because you are the guys who's playing this, right? And the white pieces, I am playing d4, and you have the option to answer d4 with anything. And if you have the option to answer d4 with anything, then you are the guy who has to know what to do with the thing that you select to do against d4. Hope that makes sense. So I played f3 here. Your knight is going to get away. See how, and this is something that you can reinforce with the first video, I think, or the second video that I published. I think this is important for you to know. This knight on e4 is not doing anything yet. Knight c5. Then suddenly see how I do not want to take your knight on c5. Strategically, that's not correct for me. And suddenly here, You had 4 minutes and now you have 2 minutes 56 seconds. That means that you are thinking a minute here to think about what to do. And that's too much, you know, because the move is forced. What else do you have? If the move is forced in Blitz, do not think about it. No, sacking the knife here doesn't make sense. No, it's not gonna fly. Before even thinking about sacrificing your pieces, think about how many pieces do you have to go to attack, right? This might be a sacrifice that could work with a low-rated player or a player who is not so comfortable with tactics on knight takes g3, but that's not gonna fly. Because just out of... So for you to calculate a sacrifice, in Blitz at least, you have to realize that it is gonna take a lot of time. And also, you have to realize, at least if the tactic is not obvious, you're gonna give away a lot of time on the clock, right? Also, before even considering to sacrifice a piece, you have to see the position and you have to realize some things. I wouldn't even consider knight takes g3 in this position for a couple of reasons. First of all, my knight on c8 is really bad and it's not being a part of the attack. Second thing that I will be considered after f3, of course. I mean, in this position, I wouldn't be considering either to take on g3, even though g3 looks weak. The reason why is basically because of this bishop here, also because I have a lot of pieces around my king, right? Also because this bishop is on f4 defending on g3, and also because you're trading pieces in the future, like if you want to get into h4, you're trading pieces. Also because I cannot bring my rook in a trampoline, as it usually happens in these positions, because the pawn is on e5. That means that it's gonna take a lot of time for me to get some reinforcements to attack in the king side. I wouldn't even consider knight takes g3. I know that you want to sacrifice a lot of pieces, but sometimes it is not gonna fly. This is one of these times. You do not have to even consider this knight takes g3 in this position because of what I just told you. You do not have enough pieces to attack. So that's just gonna give the other guy a lot of pieces, and that's fine for me, right? So knight c5, I don't want to trade the knight for your knight on c5 because that's improved your position, and I know that this knight on c5 is not so good, so I don't want to do that. I play knight e4 because first of all, this knight here looks really nice. It's attacking on e6, and that's stopping you from playing bishop a6. This knight on c5 looks nice, but it is not so nice because I'm playing b4, and if you play bishop a6, for example, even though your knight is defending here, you have to move your knight, and I'm winning a quality, right? That's not good for you. So in this position, you have to think really well what you're gonna do, because this is falling. This move might be coming and taking your bishop, even though I'm not quite sure if in this position I want to do so, because I have a really good knight on d4. Also, yeah, your position is starting to get really bad. So I'm playing b4. Your knight cannot go to d7, because if you go with your knight to d7, then I'm taking on e6. Bad situation for your knight. What else do I have here in this position? You cannot play even a5 because b4 comes anyways, and then your knight has to go to b7, which is a really sad square to have a knight. I don't like to have knights on b7 when I am black, the black pieces, or on g7. These are horrible squares for knights usually. It is rare when the best move for your knight is to go to g7 or to b7. I mean, or it's a really best square that you have on the board. It is really weird when you have to go to g7 for some good reasons. Usually when you go to b7 or to g7, that means that your pieces are going backwards and that everything is starting to fall apart. That's a bad sign, and you do not want that, right? So here, bishop takes h4, mistake. I wouldn't even consider bishop takes h4 in this position because of what I just told you. There are too many pieces. I have control of the center, and you're just gonna come with your queen and you're gonna try to kill me. That's not gonna fly. Even if you try to bring your rook, that's not gonna fly. Bishop takes h4. Probably I should have played just g takes h4, and this is winning anyways. But I thought, well, g takes h4, queen takes h4, alright, queen takes h4, and I thought, well, I should play something like bishop h2, and then f3 might be a little bit annoying. So I thought, let's get this even a little bit more complex. So this probably is winning too. I mean, you do not have anything to do here in this position yet. Maybe queen d2 is also coming. with threats of playing something like bishop g5, stopping you from playing anything like g5 and coming, so that you have to play g6 and so that you have to play h6, sorry, to try to play g5 in the future, and that's gonna take even more tempi. So something to consider yet. Bishop h2 maybe directly is stopping you from doing all of this. I have to make even more calculus here, but in general terms, just out of common sense, I wouldn't sacrifice on h4. I played b4 because I thought, well, I'm gonna trade some pieces here. After I trade some pieces, as I have pieces around my king, you're not gonna kill me, right? Of course, this is not necessarily something that you have to say all the time, because sometimes there is a tactical answer to a position which looks okay, you know? So that's the problem with chess. Everything is relative, everything is changing, and that's complicated. So g5 here, I thought a little bit about this move, and I thought, well, it's just helping me a little bit more because I am trading more pieces. So I do not care that much about taking on h4, even though it looks that I am opening my position here. I thought it is not gonna fly yet because I have a lot of pieces to come here. So I am trading here, giving away a pawn on h4, nothing extremely crazy. And now see how I am just gonna defend. This is really hard for you to attack. Your bishop on c8 is horrible. You are 2 pieces down. You're not 1 piece down, you're 2 pieces down, because this bishop on c8 is horrible. You know, in terms of the position, dynamically, of course statically you're just a piece down, but dynamically you're 2 pieces down, because this bishop is extremely bad, and for you to attack with this bishop. Also, something that I like is that you played c4 for my position, because now you do not have bishop a6, which might be a little bit annoying playing on e2. Of course, I'm not gonna go to d4 for you to play c5 and take even more control of the center. So c4, knight d2, queen takes h4, queen e1, queen g5, rook f2, and see how I'm just gonna defend the position. There is no way that you're gonna kill me with a queen and a rook in this position. I don't think so. So I thought, well, I'm gonna bring as many pieces as I can. Should I have played king f7 instead of king h8? I think it's kind of irrelevant here, but king f7 looks a little bit better, because you're bringing your king towards the center, and we're about to get into an endgame. So this kind of moves make a little bit more of sense, because your king is not in this position. I think king f7 makes a little bit more of sense than king h8, and I would recommend you to do so. So in this position, you played king h8, but even king h8 is, I do believe that this is losing. So knight f1, probably not the best defensive move. Maybe there is another continuation that I didn't see. Maybe king h2 makes sense, so that I can play bishop here, or no, it doesn't make a lot of sense. You have this queen g3. Yeah, but I don't know if knight f1 is the best continuation here, but I thought I'm gonna bring more pieces and I'm gonna defend. I just have 28 seconds, and you have 2 minutes. So I am the guy who is defending, right? Knight f1, rook g8, now knight h2, a lot of pieces are coming around my king. Now I have a safe square on h1 without any checks on h4, which might be annoying, and that's good for my king. h5, I go to h1, and now basically I'm gonna bring my pieces and I'm gonna trade. That's what I want to do. The faster I trade, the easier the position is gonna become, and then I do not have to be so concerned about the time and about tricks. It is really hard for you to attack in this position because this bishop is horrible. So h4, that's not gonna fly, because what are you gonna do, h3? No, that's not good. Instead of doing all of this, h5, all this, move your bishop away and try to do something like rook g7 and rook g8. That's something that I was more concerned about. Instead of doing this h5, h4, which is not gonna fly because at any point I have bishop, queen f1, and then I'm defending on h3, bring your other rook, play something like bishop d7 or bishop, I don't know. This bishop is horrible, so any square is not gonna fly, but it is better to do so that you bring more pieces to attack. Whenever you're attacking, you want as many pieces as you can to be attacking. Otherwise, look how, as I am defending, I am bringing so many pieces to defend. It is almost absurd. I have 3 pieces here, you see, and I am not even using the computer here. So you can imagine, right? See how I am defending with 4 pieces, and I'm gonna bring even this rook to defend if I have to. 4 pieces defending against 2, that's not gonna fly. No matter if you are fucking, I don't know, Tal or something. So that's something to be considered, right? No matter if you're Tal in this position, you're not gonna win. It's not gonna happen. So bring your pieces, attack. That's cool. But h5 is not gonna fly. King h1, just a little bit of bringing even more pieces. Bishop h3, and now see that you have to bring your king for some reason that I do not understand. Sorry. Do not bring your king here. I was expecting something like this. And that should be even better. And that should be something even better. So, what do you have to consider in this position? Bishop h3, queen g2, it's gonna play. No, but that's not good. I mean, rook h8. No, that's not good. Because, dude, bring the other pieces. If you want to play rook h8, play rook h8 with the other rook. You're losing, but do something to lose, like harder, or make the position harder for me to play. You know, bring more pieces. So king g7 makes no sense. I understand that you're gonna play h3 if you can, but I can just stop you with bishop h3. So even if you put like 1,000 pieces here, I have just bishop h3, and how are you gonna get rid of the bishop on h3? That's not gonna fly. So king g7, bishop h3, queen g3. Now this is helping me because I'm trading pieces. Rook g1. And well, in this position, I have to figure out a way to trade this queen here. So queen f1, perfect. I do not want to trade on g3, of course. There is a fork, and that should be horrible for me. So queen f1. Now you are obliged to take. I take, and in this position, I'm totally winning. Rook g8. Probably here rook g2 made more sense, but I wanted to bring my king towards the center to stop you from any tricks with these kind of things. So I didn't want that. Rook king f1. I thought maybe a better idea for you is to try to play something like, instead of rook g8, rook b8 here in this position. For example, king takes, rook b8. The idea is that you're getting into this line, which is more annoying for me. To be honest with you, I was thinking that this was a little bit annoying because my pieces now I have to bring them back towards the center, and that's gonna be slow. So I thought he's probably gonna play something like this, and this queen side here is a little bit harder to defend because my pawns are not in the best square. So I thought something like rook b8, then I had to play something like rook f1, maybe bishop c6 or something, and now I have to defend here, and that's gonna be hard. So probably I'm losing this pawn or this one, and it's getting hard to defend. So this is a better plan. I should be winning here too, but it is still better for you. So this rook g8 doesn't make any sense because this is a file which is totally defended and you cannot get into. So rook g8 doesn't make sense. You're giving a check just because you're giving a check. You have an advantage when it comes to time on the clock. So use the time on the clock and don't go so crazy. c5, rook g2. Now I'm trading pieces. Do not trade the rook. Do not allow me to trade the rook, dude. Your only chance to have something with this position is to not trade your rook, because if you trade your rook, then you're simplifying the position, helping me because I have 13 seconds, and also helping me because it is really easy to stop these pawns if there is no rook to support them. So d4, mistake. Rook takes, king a1, and now see how you have this train here, and I can stop that just with my king. Instead of playing bishop c6 here, so look how your king is on g8 and it's doing nothing. My king is going to be centralized. So I take here, and now everything is falling apart. This should be easy to win. Stopping a4, important, stopping you from coming here and getting some activity, which I didn't want. e3, because I think in this position maybe h3 is your best chance, like after taking on e3, knight takes, and then play h3, because it's a little bit annoying. So if I take on h3, then you have bishop takes, and that's harder to win. And if I play bishop h1, then your pawn is a little bit closer to the 8th rank. So, whoa, somebody might have killed themselves. Knight takes bishop first. Oh yeah, I have this intermediate move here with check. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So king c7 not a good move either, because if you play king c7 then you're exposing yourself to a check. So maybe king d7, but of course this is hard to see when you have 13 seconds, right? So f4, now I'm trading pieces, and in this position I should be winning, I think, because now I'm just gonna elaborate a plan here. King here, e6, so that you're now a slave of this pawn on e6. I was thinking that maybe another plan might be something like coming here or something like that, but or something like this, you know, maybe trying to take this pawn, but I was afraid that I had to take care of these pawns here too, so I couldn't go too crazy. But I think this plan couldn't be that bad, I guess, or something like taking here eventually, or as I did, just moving my king around, so that I was expecting you to move one of these pawns because it was too tempting, you know. I knew that you were gonna do so eventually, and now that you move your pawn, then I can come back, you know, and exploit it there. So here I'm winning a little bit of time on the clock. Now I'm gonna take, and I can stop this pawn, and yeah, this is lost. There is no way for you to do anything about this position. So that's something important. I didn't think on that move, just like knight c6. I knew I shouldn't, but I played because I didn't think d4. Important. But see that it is not only knight c6. See that there are a lot of consequences, not only out of knight c6, but in your position in general. So here, yeah, this is just not that hard. But let's go backwards and let's see that you're missing not only knight c6, your problems here are not only knight c6, but you're missing a couple of things. You're not creating a plan, you're not developing your pieces properly, you're not thinking about your position in terms of space and in terms of time, just like Albert Einstein will do. And I don't know why I say that, but yeah, here you have to think about the space, you have to think about your pieces, you have to think about trading pieces if you do not have a lot of space. It looks like you have a space, but in reality it is not flying. So now bishop d7, and in this position you have to consider f3. Important thing to consider here, and really important thing to consider. Imagine that you play then a natural move like c5 and you don't see f3, then I have f3 in this position, you know. f3 is really important, and you're losing a piece here. So it's really important. You have to consider the moves of your rival. You have to create a plan. I see that your pieces do not have a plan. You're just trying to attack for attacking because you like tactics. But attacking for attacking is going to cost you a lot of games. Do not do that. Attack when you're sure that the position requires an attack. Otherwise, you have to play positional. Because chess sometimes is boring. We have to accept that. Sometimes chess is just we do boring moves and then we win. Sometimes chess is exciting. Of course, I played a really strategical game here because I knew that that might be your problem, and I can see that there are some flaws when it comes to the strategical thinking or the strategical thought in your positions. So that's something that you have to consider. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you like this, and I think it was a lot of fun. So if anything, you know that you can send me always a message